Hi everyone, good afternoon. Wait, let me just make sure we're live here. Peggy, can you see if we are? I'm not seeing it.
Okay, hold. Let me go on FB and check.
Yeah, go on my page, please, and see. I'm not seeing it.
Okay, give me a minute.
Thank you.
On your page. No, it's not there.
It's not there.
All of that have to do with the internet connection.
Yeah, but it says live on Facebook. Stop stream, but it's not showing. It's streaming, but it's just not showing. If we are live, first of all, good afternoon to our viewers. If we are live, we're trying to figure that out right now because on our end, we're not seeing it, all right? And for the entire day, we have been having both Peggy, our guest, and I have been having the same issue, all right? So regardless of when we change, if we change the locations, it just seems, we kept getting the message saying the internet is unstable, all right? So let me just double check because as I said, both Peggy and I are not seeing this live on Facebook. So we're just gonna check one more time just to make sure, even though it shows on our end that it is happening. Let me see. Oh yeah, it's there. It's there, Peggy. It's there. Peggy, can you hear me? It's there. Yeah, it's there.
Okay, great.
So
they've been hearing our
it's not showing. So yes. Good afternoon, everyone. We apologize for that. We're having this internet issue on both our ends, not just mine, not just Peggy's, but both our ends. So we apologize for that. We weren't even too sure if we were online. It was saying to us that we were live, but we could not have seen it. So we apologize for that. How are you all doing? The weather has been very bleaky today. It's been extremely hot these past few days, and there's just a lot of things happening in terms of the coronaviruses here in St. Maarten. The coronavirus, sorry, it's continued to the cases continue to increase, and that is very scary. And a lot of time, well, most persons, so including myself, we are alarmed by the figures, right? But what we also have to bear in mind, while those figures may look astronomical, I'm pretty sure there are so many other cases out there that are not reported because there are some people who are just afraid to come forward. There are some people who do not, they believe to themselves that it has a stigma, you know? So they don't want to face that truth, but they are, which I'm confident, there are persons out there who never took the test, but they do have signs for COVID. And so that is a reminder that we really and truly need to pay attention to the manner in which we address ourselves in public, all right? So this is just a little reminder. I mean, we've been hearing it all day, all night, but this is just a responsibility on my end, all right? So today we have a very informative Gyhaff, very informative. So my intention is to relax and pretend as though I don't know anything and do my best to get all the information, as much information as possible from Peggy-ANN Dros. Let me not even say anything about Peggy, all right? I know Peggy has a huge following on Facebook. She has a very good presence. I've known Peggy for, I would say, 8 years, almost 9 years now. some of the events we've had, she's always supported those events. So we've always kept that level of communication. So I'm very, very appreciative of that. So Peggy, thank you publicly for that. Before I even continue, let's jump right into Peggy. All right, Peggy, I won't introduce you, as I said. I will give you the honors to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Keoma, for such a warm welcome, and thank you for inviting me to your show. I hope I'm not butchering the name of your show. You said it was Gyhaffin?
Gyhaffin.
Okay, that's a new word. That's a new word for me. So Gyhaffin. So I'm very happy to be on your program, and that you extended this invitation to me, despite the circumstances. Just for those persons and for those in your audience that don't know me, my name is Peggy-ANN DROS, and it's actually Peggy-Ann, and the last name is Dross. A lot of people connect the Ann and the Dross for some reason, and I'm always like, why are they doing that? But anyway, I'm the Division Head of Labor Affairs and Social Services in the Ministry of Public Health, Social Development, and Labor. I've been in that post. I think I was probably one of the last recruits when we just became country in October of 2010. So I've actually been in that position. It'll be 10 years in October of this year, and actually 8 years, or actually 7 years with social services. So that's basically me, professionally speaking. I know that you wanted to talk about some items related to my work, so I don't know if you want to start to ask some questions, or if you just want to ask a lead question, or you just want me to go get into it.
Before, as I mentioned, I will just pretend as though I know nothing, so I can get everything out, because this is what we want our viewers to get, everything as much as possible. And Peggy, I will remind you, let's be as, not to insult the intellect of our people, of course, but we want to make sure the content, the information we're putting out there, any person can listen to it and be able to understand just from the get-go. So let's be as layman as possible, all right? So you mentioned just now your role, how long you've been in that capacity. I know that when there's a disaster, we experience Hurricane Irma, and I know how, how we have to be on the go in that role. And these are the departments you service in, you work in. They're directly connected to our people, social services, directly to the people. So now in the height of COVID, what has it been like so far for you as a division head?
Okay, thank you for that question, Keoma. I think we need to really try to position things properly. The Division of Labor Affairs and Social Services is a division in the Ministry of Public Health, Social Development, and Labor. However, when there's a hurricane and when the EOC is activated, it's very important for persons to understand that the original, if I can put it like that, government structure falls back, and the EOC takes over under the leadership and the chairmanship, or in this case, the chair ladyship of our incumbent Honorable Prime Minister Sylvania Jacobs. So that is the case for hurricanes when the EOC is activated, and that is also the case when the EOC was activated in March, I believe, or April, when we were at the height of the first wave of the COVID 2019. Now, importantly is that in the EOC, there are, of course, all of those emergency functions, one of them being ESF 7. And ESF 7 is the function that manages social services. The coordinator of ESF 7 is the incumbent Secretary General of VSA, or Secretary General of the Ministry, Ms. Joy Arnell. And so with the EOC activated, all the departments across the government that are supportive in executing certain tasks as laid out and as directed by the EOC and those coordinators, social services would fall part of that. But it's important for persons to understand that as an execution agency, we're literally executing what is being told to us to execute. So it sometimes it comes across as if, well, you could do what you want. And that's actually not the case. We're an execution agency and we have to execute in a disaster what the EOC through ESF 7 instructs us to do. And within normal circumstances, we are executing the legislation that is part of our task based on the national ordinance that lays out the framework for the ministry. So I think that's very important for people to understand also the scope of authority then that the division carries. Concerning COVID, I think it's,
go ahead.
Sorry, I think it's interesting that we do talk about COVID because I very often tell people, and I don't really know how this comes across, it probably comes across, maybe it comes across sounding wrong, but it is a fact. I really think that COVID-19 has served a blow to St. Maarten and to the region and globally much worse than any geographical occurrence or natural disaster could have done. When Irma occurred in 2017, I can remember coming out of my home with my husband and my parents were with us on September 7th. And, you know, I really thought that it was over for us. Really, I felt a lot of, not a sense, loss of hope. You know, it was such a devastation. But fast forward to 2018, 2019, and even the beginning of 2020, and I believe the Honorable Minister of Finance, Artwell Irion, stated it in one of his early press briefings that pre-COVID, you know, our books weren't looking that bad. You know, I mean, we weren't where we were pre-Irma, but we were definitely making a comeback. I think the central bank confirmed that as well. But COVID now is a whole other story. And I think also there's so much that we don't know, even from a public health perspective, but also from a legislative perspective. And that makes matters more difficult, especially as it relates to how do we mediate and how do we resolve labor disputes in this environment with a pandemic. And I think that a lot of people, and I'm not blaming people because it's rough, and it's been rough, you know.
It has been, definitely.
It's been rough. So, you know, I'm usually not one of those people that say, oh, you know, people now start to suffer because of COVID. Actually, there's been a big amount of persons in our population that have been systemically suffering even before Irma. And every disaster, be it a pandemic, be it a natural disaster that occurs here in St. Maarten, only deepens their distress. You know, and it makes it very difficult, especially in a situation like this. The division has responded to the COVID situation. I mean, just for I believe you are aware, and I believe most should be aware because the government announced it as well. The division has been closed since Monday afternoon due to the fact that COVID showed up at our doors with a COVID positive result from one of our team members. It has forced us to close the division, and the government's protocol kicked in, and we're working remotely as much as we can. We intend to reopen on Monday partially with a skeleton crew, and we will proceed accordingly, again, following the expert advice and guidance of CPS. And I do want to publicly commend CPS and the head of CPS, Ms. Ava Lister de Weaver, Ms. Nadine Richardson, the nurse that is actually guiding the team individually for what I consider to be an outstanding service given the circumstances with the limited resources that even that unit has. I think that we should not turn a blind eye to the difficulty that CPS is probably having in managing a pandemic that they've never had to manage before. So hats off to them. But Keoma, just to put things in perspective, to give you kind of like a timeline of what's occurring with our products and services and the impact that these disasters have. And I'll just throw some quick stats. Where social services is concerned, when I took over in 2013, the total amount of persons on our financial bank list, what we call bank list internally, but what is known to the public as the financial aid list or the welfare list, when people go monthly to collect money at the bank for financial aid. In 2013, that amount, I don't even think it was 400 people per month. It probably was in upwards of 350 at a given moment. We were probably 410, 420. Post Irma, we went a bit over 500. We nearly hit 600, and then it tapered off again as businesses opened. Business interruption insurance money was released to people and things. So our numbers kind of held. With the COVID 2019 situation, within such a short period of time, we're clipping close to 880 people on the financial aid list. And that's just as a result of COVID 2019. Very, very alarming. It should not be surprising, but alarming still, because at the end of the day, from my perspective, the financial aid does not help sufficiently. There are a host of other services and products that we should be offering. Again, this is my opinion. If you go to Curaçao and Aruba, they also have other products and services offering to persons that are struggling, which includes a housing subsidy, different allowances for different basic needs that should be met, including utility allowances. I think Barbados has that sort of a setup. So there's a lot that regionally our brothers and sisters are doing that for some reason or the other, our legislative branch or the policy departments within government are not sufficiently heeding the alarm being sounded by the execution agency. I'm speaking very frankly, because I think that it doesn't hurt to say these things because it brings awareness. I'm also aware, again, we're struggling with lack of resources. That also is an issue because it's very easy to say, well, you know, why they don't write a law? You know, to write a law also requires you to be able to recruit the right level of expertise. People are not going to upheave themselves from Holland or anywhere else to come to St. Maarten to assist with writing of legislation for peanuts. And with a country that is suffering with finances, you can imagine that that sets a lot of things behind. And I'm also not so much a proponent of a copy and paste. We have copy and pasted laws from the Netherlands Antilles and brought them over, in my opinion, blindly to country St. Maarten. And in my opinion, that also has not helped our case too much. But let's get back on point. So our numbers have grown. We have close to 2,000 plus people receiving medical aid. And I'll talk about that because that's my soap opera box, the medical aid. I think you're aware why as well.
Tell us more about it.
Yeah, so I'll come back to that. Let me just finish off the numbers. We then have, on the labor side, we have a number of labor disputes that were filed in the post-COVID 2019 situation. The total amount that has been filed, and that filing would have started as soon as we closed and we started to accept labor disputes. There was an email, etc. It was about 194 of those cases were filed. 144 of those labor disputes were related directly to COVID 2019. 50 of them are not. A majority of those cases, and I have the document, but I'm so afraid with the internet connection to close this down to access the document. I don't want to do it. But a majority of those cases have been resolved or referred to court. And that's where I said recently as well that I do not want people to be afraid to take a matter to court. This is a cultural thing where people like, I don't want to go to court. It pays to take the matter to court, especially if we're telling you you have a case. Take it to court. We recently had one of many victories where an employee was awarded close to 70,000 guilders in a labor dispute that we insisted was unlawful dismissal. We spoke to the employer held their head, they decided they're dismissing this employee, they don't care. And we advised and we mediate, we showed the law, we said this is unlawful dismissal. And then we told the employee, do you want legal aid to take this matter to court? Because we do believe that this is unlawful dismissal. The client decided to take up our offer to get the legal aid to carry the matter to court, and the client was awarded close to 70,000 guilders plus retroactive salary payment and a penalty percentage on top of that.
Wow.
So the judge
Wow.
slammed the employer heavily. We had many of those cases successful in the post-Irma environment as well. Many of those cases were won. The problem now in
Peggy,
COVID,
let me ask you this. Peggy, let me ask you before you continue. Let me ask you this. Why do you think persons are intimidated to even, is there a stigma on the word court? Why do you think persons are afraid of taking that approach?
I don't know if they're afraid as much as they just don't have patience. And I don't say this judgmentally, because it's easy for me to say, take it to court and month end I get in my salary. These persons are, many times the employer withholds salary, which is also unlawful, because if you're in a labor dispute and unless you received permission to terminate this employee, you are supposed to maintain that employee on your payroll. And many employers, you know, they take you off the payroll and then this person literally going hungry. I mean, how are they going to survive? So me telling them take it to court, sometimes the court takes a while as well. Now, I always try to encourage them. We do not tell them which lawyer to take for obvious reasons, because in every sense of the word, the yellow card or the legal aid that's offered through the government of St. Maarten pays the lawyer a very minimum amount. I think it's 900 guilders per case. I could be wrong. That entire budget post actually rests under the Ministry of Justice. The card is signed by the Minister of Justice. The department only functions as an administrative body to process the legal aid. So many times these attorneys are working pro bono, as you would say in the States, a free lawyer, as it were, free 900 guilders, harassment for this case. Some lawyers, you know, they drag their feet on it. They don't position the case properly. And then that frustrates the client, because as I told someone on social media recently, many of these labor cases, in my opinion, should be filed by the court as an immediate injunction, or what they call in Dutch a kortgeding met spoed, meaning urgently, because it is a matter of the basic need of this client not being met, which in my opinion is a matter of urgency. Many of our court cases post-Irma were filed in such a manner by attorneys that did it properly at that time, and it went very well. However, and this now the COVID 2019, some of these cases are not so clear-cut, and the waters are very much muddied, because how do I put this without creating confusion? Let me see. Okay, the waters are muddied with this because many of the COVID 2019 labor disputes also surround the execution of the SSRP payroll support that's executed on behalf of the government by the SZV. Many of those conditions are set in place as conditions that were forced, for lack of a better word, by a third party that is not a signatory to the labor agreements between employers and employees. And when I say third party, I'm going all the way up to Holland. So the Kingdom Council put in place, right, oh, these is the conditions they want, and putting of, you know, we know the whole story, putting the backs of our Council of Ministers up against the wall. It's, you know, it's a catch-22. What do you do? So many of those labor disputes are muddied because of that as well, because Of course, as labor affairs, our goal is to uphold the current labor law. And the current labor law is in some of those articles in the Civil Code, Book 7A, are in stark contrast to what we're seeing being executed now. That's not my opinion. That's not what Peggy's saying there now again. That's the facts. You understand? And it's the reason why Holland also coupled back, and now with the June payroll support, the Netherlands, of course, now said, well, okay, put the people to sign the 20% contribution agreement, and then we can move forward, because Holland themselves realized that you cannot adjust a labor agreement on a unilateral decision by one party, which occurred in many respects during the April and the May payroll run. As a matter of fact, I had one company in March, too many companies. I nearly want to say all, but I know it's not all. Too many of these companies have made unilateral decisions, and that is in stark contrast to the law. That muddies the water for labor.
Let me ask you,
cases.
I'm sorry to cut you across, and not to be rude. For viewers who do not know what the multilateral decision is, explain what that is, please, and also just give our viewers what is SSRP.
Okay, when I say unilateral decision, unilateral means if you have two parties and they both come to an agreement on something. Like, let me make a simple example. So you and I make an agreement, Keoma, that every morning you're going to come and bring me 3 red apples. We make the agreement, we sign. Every morning you bring in 3 red apples by my gate. One morning you just wake up and you decide on your own, which is unilateral. Uni means one. You on your one own decide, well, I'm not going to bring 3 apples, red apples for she again. I'm going to bring 2 green apples. That's a unilateral decision, because you didn't consult me. You didn't call me and say, Peggy, it looked like red apple difficult to get. Can I instead bring 2 green apples to your gate instead of the 3?
Yeah.
And then I say, well, okay, can you mix it and say 2 red and 1 green then? So we didn't come to an agreement. You decided on your own to do this. Yeah. That's a unilateral decision.
It was
thanks
imposed.
for that. Yeah, thanks for that, Keoma, because I tend to use things and then, so that mixes it up. The SSRP is the program that's being executed by the SZV. Actually, it's a 3-pronged program, a 3-pronged stimulus package. The 3 prongs or the 3 parts of it are, first of all, the payroll support that's paid out to businesses, to the employer, to be paid to as a part of the subsidy of the total paid to the employee. The second part is the income support, which has to do with sole proprietorship, so food truck vendors, taxi drivers, sole proprietorships that have lost income due to COVID can apply on the second part of that program. And then the third part of that program is the unemployment support, which is directly related to employees that have lost their job because of COVID-2019. They go online and apply. I really cannot talk too much about the SSRP, Keoma, out of respect for the Minister of Finance, who is actually the initiator together with his ministry and the Council of Ministers. So I really would prefer not to speak too much about that. I would end the whole SSRP by stating that there is so much information available online about SSRP, and I commend Minister Irion and his cabinet for being so transparent with this project. The website is www.ssrp.sx, and all of the information, more than I can say in this program, is on that website. So let me just finish this part with the labor disputes, because the other part that makes the labor disputes more complicated compared to post-Irma. In post-Irma, we had a very clear jurisprudence that was established in 1997 by the then union leader, social activist, the late Eldridge van Putten. He was instrumental in securing a court ruling in favor of Port-de-Plaisance workers in the post-Hurricane Louise environment with all those labor disputes that occurred. He did a phenomenal job. Port-de-Plaisance, if my memory serves me correct, even took the case to the Supreme Court of the Netherlands, and the decision was upheld all the way. That jurisprudence became the bedrock of all of our mediation in 2017 and 2018 post-Irma, because we had not only the civil code, but we had, and jurisprudence means that a court, there has been a history of court cases that are similar, related to a similar event, similar conditions, where a judge issued a verdict specifically stating, no, this doesn't apply, etc. That's jurisprudence. So we had that body of work available to us and lawyers as well in the post-Irma environment. In COVID 2019, we do not have any jurisprudence. The article of law being quoted by many employers of the no work, no pay is one of the articles that we believe is being misinterpreted. However, we have no jurisprudence to support us in our interpretation of that, especially because the businesses are stating, which is true, that it is the government of St. Maarten under the EOC that locked the island down and demanded that these businesses had to close, therefore not having work available for the employees. Again, there's no jurisprudence on how the no work, no pay article should be interpreted in that situation. Secondly, the discussion on the article that speaks about force majeure. Force majeure in layman's term is the article of law that refers to act of God. In 1997, the judge ruled indeed an interpretation of the act of God as it regards geographical and natural disasters. There is no jurisprudence that determines if a pandemic on the scale of COVID 2019 could be considered a force majeure or an act of God, and how would that be interpreted for labor conditions under either a collective labor agreement or individual labor agreements. This is a very, very, very difficult situation, Keoma, for both businesses and employees. One thing that we have consistently stated, and I say this empathetically, and I say this straightforward, employers are obligated to pay 100% salary to employees until their labor agreement has been formally dissolved, either by way of court or by way of a request to the Ministry of Labor for the rescinding of those labor agreements. That does not change because there's a global pandemic. That is extremely clear in the law. There's no if and but about that. The only way that employers can decide not to continue to pay the employee is if the employee is no longer your employee. But we have situations where businesses are not in agreement with the division, not in agreement with my person, despite our long mediation on this. And these are the cases that we're telling employees, take the matter to court. I'd like to close this point off, Keoma, by stating that given the urgency of labor disputes and the impact it has on people's lives, we have again adjusted the application process for legal aid, where we are short of guaranteeing that you can have legal aid within 72 hours after submitting your complete application. For a labor dispute, you also do not need to book an appointment. Many of our appointments are going all the way into October because we're so busy. But for labor disputes, the form is taken and the back office books it in immediately, because we recognize that time is of essence for these people that are going through a labor dispute. I don't know if you have any questions, Keoma, because I realize I talk a lot.
I was just schooled. I was schooled, but let me say this. Wentley Wilson say it again, Peggy. These employers doing whatever they feel like. So let me just remind our viewers: you can engage in this conversation, in this Gyhaff, by commenting. If you have a question for Peggy, if you whatever it is you would like to know, this is a time that you can comment it in the comment section, and we will be able to engage with that. But Peggy, my mind just went all over because that was a lot of information.
Yeah, I do want to say this, Keoma, because sometimes people, especially business people, think that, oh, we're wrong with the labor department, always want to. Let me tell you, during the COVID, I received many calls from business owners, and the majority of those calls came from the small to medium business owners. I can recall, and I'm not going to call the business name, of course. This one gentleman called me, and you know, he was very concerned, and he was like, and I told him, did you pay your employees? He said, yes, I paid them. He showed evidence. All his employees, he paid them 100%. He has never reduced none of their pay. He never forced them to go on vacation. And he was like, Mrs. Dross, I'm just trying to continue because I really care about my employees, and I know this is a difficult time for them, and you know, I'm just trying to see how I'm going to survive. But you know, every month that passes, I'm just, you know, continuing to pay them. You know, we have our system set up to ensure that we always have a little bit money aside as a business to make sure that in the event of something like this, our employees are paid. And I had many calls like that. And the reason why I'm saying it is because, you know, we shouldn't think that all of them are the same. There are some employers,
yes, I agree,
and you know who you are, that are consistently doing the same thing over and over. Sometimes, I mean, this is going to sound bad. Sometimes when I get an email or call from, or even from the 4th floor, a minister calls me and says, Peggy, did you know that so-and-so did? I just be like, they again? They don't get tired doing this thing to these employees? So there are chronically some employers that we have them on a list. It's like the top 10. We know we can expect, like, for example, if God forbid we were to get a natural disaster this year, which, oh God, I hope not. We already know which employer going to come with a story again, because there's some of them systemically they do it, chronically they do it. It's a problem. And some of it is big employers.
This may, I don't know how this question may sound, but seeing that there is a pattern of some of these employers that are systematically doing these things, isn't there a way that some kind of heat can happen?
If the system works correctly, then there should be something that should be done, because when we became country, St. Maarten in 2010, the federal and the island labor department was separated. When we were eilandgebied St. Maarten, so when we were island in the Netherlands Antilles, I wasn't working for government at the time, but whoever did the new structure for what we're in now, I don't know, they probably didn't look at the best practices to try to adapt those. They just decided to do what they thought was best. And this was one of the fundamental mistakes they made. Hindsight is 2020. They removed the compliance aspect out of the execution agency, and they placed it in one central location separate from us. So I do not have control nor authority over labor inspectors. They do not report to me. But if the system was to work correctly, then these businesses should have received a fine already through the public prosecutor's office or through an administrative fine through the Inspector General of the ministry that's headed by Dr. Earl Best. So if the system works correctly, then that unit should be following up on these compliance issues, which are all known to them. Perhaps maybe Keoma, you can invite Dr. Best on your show to discuss that, because it would not be for me to discuss his department, or how he structures it, or what they do from what they do not do?
We can definitely follow up on that, Peggy, after, definitely. I forgot her name. Why do I forget her name? But on Facebook, she'll love shine. Isn't it possible to have some
She
type
has
of
a real
recognition
name,
for
like she has
businesses?
another name?
No, she works in legal affairs. Why
Okay.
don't I remember her name? She worked in legal affairs in the government, right? But she asked, isn't it possible to have some type of recognition for businesses, like a business ethics sticker of some sorts, valid for a certain time? Just a thought.
I would love that idea, you know, but I remember a few years back when we were dealing with some of the security companies and some of the other companies as well, I wanted to do a blacklisting. So I wasn't looking to give people recognition. I was more trying to create a blacklist or a better business bureau type of a thing to kind of rate businesses in terms of their compliance and in terms of you know, where's a good place to go and get a job? You know, where do they treat you right? Where are the benefits good? Where's the salary good? You know, where's the workplace environment, workplace safety and compliance, and the work-life balance with families? Which companies are really good? I had made that suggestion to the government a few years back, but it is what it is.
So
okay.
Monica Helliger states, she said, I went to the United States on vacation. While on vacation, I got sick, very sick. While I was there, I was told by my employer, no work, no pay. Came back to the island, still no salary.
And she's okay, so she's just making she's just making that statement.
Making a statement.
Yeah, that's at the end of the day, that's also wrong, because first of all, if she was on vacation is always with pay. So she should have received her pay in any event. If during her vacation she fell ill and she's able to provide evidence of that sick leave, then the employer needs to credit her back those vacation days, because you can't be on vacation and sick. So then you get your days back. And quite frankly, the employer would have to pay her that money. Again, the no work, no pay in our interpretation would not apply in a scenario like hers. I would encourage her to contact the department. I can provide you with information of contact after Keoma that you can post on your social media page. And I would strongly suggest that she files a dispute for that situation. Again, you know, I do want to say this, Keoma, that, and I always tell people this, don't put me on the spot to try to mediate a case on half information. It doesn't serve you well, it doesn't serve me well, it doesn't serve anybody well. So if I'm answering questions or giving guidance during this show, it's very limited because I have no documents in front of me, and I'm basically just giving feedback based on a comment on social media, which definitely is not the way to go. If you have a legitimate case, you should file a dispute, you should bring your documents, and we'll assess them and we'll take it from there. Just a general statement.
So Monica Helliger, I'm sure you heard that, because she further commented to say, while I was in New York, I went to the doctor 3 times, sent doctor letter to the company, to Switzerland. They told me I have to contact SFV. So that, as you stated, Peggy, and I definitely want to add to that, or basically support that. I think for something like this, Monica, you definitely should gather your documents and your case together and take the necessary steps to visit the labor department, actually.
Correct, because now you see there, and again, Keoma, if I may just interject this, just as the general statement, I think you see now she's bringing in, just in that short period of time, she has added another layer to her dispute. She has brought in SZV in it, and immediately now the scenario changes again. Because if she's SZV covered and she's sick off island and she returns with a sick note from the doctor in the US or wherever she was, wherever the person was that fell ill. Indeed, the employer is correct in stating that this is something that she would have to take to the SZV for the SZV to validate and put her in their system as having been sick for that period of time. And just to explain people why that's important, because I wouldn't want people, oh, Peggy, what Peggy's saying to people. No, because a business is a business. A business pays, if the business is doing business correctly, they're paying premium to SZV for the sick coverage of the employee. Every employee that's registered by the SZV as being ill during a given calendar year, the year that follows, the employer, the business can write SZV and claim loss of wages. So the company gets that money back from the SZV. If the employee doesn't go to get their sick leave validated by the SZV, then the employer loses all hope. They can't claim the loss of wages. They don't know if you were really sick. SZV didn't validate the sick note. So short of the long, please encourage Ms. Monica to indeed go to the SZV. SZV is closed, but their website is very robust and it includes email addresses that she would be able to upload her sick note to and engage in a conversation with a medical officer at the SZV to validate the sick note and validate her sick leave period. And then SZV could probably even pay her wages at a certain percentage depending on the length of the sick leave. So indeed, she should go to the SZV.
So Monica Helliger, you heard that. I'm not too sure how to pronounce this person's name, but I'll say E. Richardson. He asked, who enforces that an employer complies with the labor laws?
That would be the compliance department under Dr. Best. That's
Okay.
the labor inspector. As a matter of fact,
so
and
we
this
definitely
is
have to talk to Dr. Best.
Yeah, this was publicly published in the National Gazette in February of this year, just before the COVID. I think it was February of this year or last year. Time does go so fast, it could have been last year. It was published for public knowledge, and I will share that with you after the program as well, that you can post it. I think I posted it on my social media page as well. The governor signed off a Landsbesluit, how you sit down, and a decree appointing the chief labor inspector by name of Andrew Boudicca to be the compliance officer and to fulfill the role of compliance in all areas, including employment permits, labor laws, dismissal laws, the civil code, the vacation regulation, the overtime payment, all of those matters. Mr. Andrew Boudicca, in his capacity as Chief Inspectorate for Labor, reporting to Dr. Earl Best, is responsible, signed off by national decree by the governor of St. Maarten and co-signed by the respective minister at the time, is authorized to walk up to a business and call them to order.
Peggy, before we continue, I would like to encourage our viewers to subscribe with Gyhaffin. It's Gyhaffin.com, Gyhaffin. So Gyhaffin.com to keep up to date with what we're doing, what's coming up next, our newsletter. We're still working on our site, but we would definitely like to build that momentum with having some subscribers. So if you enjoy this content, if you enjoy all of our previous content, you know what Gyhaffin stands for. We encourage you, and I ask you kindly to subscribe, Gyhaffin.com, Gyhaffin.com. So thank you so much for that. Biz Markey, don't worry, I see you here, my team. Thank you so much for that. So Peggy, let's go right back into this. Information is so essential. And I think it could not, even though I believe it should have always been, we should have been equipped with this information, this knowledge. This is no short of the right time, because definitely COVID has been twisting and turning us when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to employment, employment for employee as well as the employer, because we spoke about the laws for employees and also employers. Did we touch base on, in which ways can employers, what laws are there for them?
In which sense? You mean employers or employees?
Employers, because for definitely employees, there are laws that protect them as well. So what is there for employers? If an employer is listening right now, they would want to know what is there to protect us.
Well, the same legislation is a legislation that is comprehensive. When you read the Civil Code Book 7A, it does not only speak about employees, it also speaks about employers, and it also speaks about employees' responsibilities and accountabilities and what employees must do in order to be a good employee. One of the things that was highlighted by us most recently was because, and again, people don't like to hear this. And I always tell people, if we can't live our lives based only on what we want to hear. Sometimes we have to live our lives based on what we don't want to hear, but what is required. There's a big part of the Civil Code Book 7A that speaks about the mandate or the legal requirement for employees to be reasonable. It is a very much forgotten article of law. It is in the law, where there is a demand that employees must be reasonable. This is something that we have highlighted during this COVID-2019 situation, and it is something that we will continue to highlight. It is also something that we state to employees. Many times when I meet with employees, I always tell employees, make a decision for you and your family. Don't make a decision because you follow in the crowd getting all hype up. At the end of the day, if your family goes hungry, you lose your job, your children can't go to school, the crowd will not be there to support your family. So you have to take all the information that we're giving you, information from us, information from your employer, copies of documents that your employer may have given you, our commentary on it, and we strongly advise you within all reasonableness to go home, speak to your spouse, your partner, your loved ones, mom, dad, children, whoever's in your inner circle, and come to a conclusion to make a decision. The hurtful part with that advice, Keoma, and it hurts me to say this, is that employers many times play on the emotional heartstrings of our people. And that has gone from 0 to 100 in this COVID 2019. I have people calling me, WhatsApping me, telling me that the employer called them today, come fast, sign this thing now, hurry up because I need to go do this thing. Wrong. Hurry up, else you're getting your pay this month. Wrong. So we want employees to be reasonable, but we want employers, there has to be a middle road. Two parties have to walk as one for the benefit of the agreement. That's the main thing. So the same legislation that I'm talking about speaks about different things that protect the employer. I just mentioned one concerning the sick leave. The employer is protected by the means and ways for them to recoup on loss of wages of sick leave from SZV if they've been paying their SZV premium. All of that is a protection buffer for the employer. The employer is also protected somewhat by the dismissal law, because an employee that is consecutively ill for 1 year can be dismissed legally. Even a permanent employee, that's a protection for the employer. Where you have some employees that sick all the time, they can't produce anything, the employer can submit a request for their dismissal. And many times the Secretary General, who is the authority to make those decisions, many times grants it if it is adequately proven that the employee has been ill more than a year. So those are areas that can that are for protection. The entire section of the Civil Code that talks about the progressive disciplinary steps are also part of the protection for the employer. We have to remember, though, that we live in a kingdom that is a socialist kingdom. And living in a socialist kingdom, it's not like the US. In the US, it is very much driven by capitalism. You going wrong, you just going wrong one day in that Home Depot job, one day you reach wrong and your face look wrong, you fired on the spot, no discussion. We don't live in that sort of an environment here. Over here, many times the court rules in favor of the lesser party. So businesses do have the owners to always prove that they have exerted every effort to protect the employee and the employee interest, because many times the judge rules in favor of the lesser party. Of course, you always have those cases that don't go that way. But by and large, that's the nature of our business, the nature of our system.
Thank you, Peggy. So for our viewers, again, just reminding everyone, if you have any comments, any questions you would like to ask, this is the time for you to ask it. I see Whitney Wilson is here. Why am I getting tongue twisted? I think I need to put on my glasses. Monica, I just want you to know that I saw your comment. I'm so proud of each and every one of you. You're doing a fantastic job, very informative. May God bless you all. So Peggy, that was extended by Monica Helliger. So thank you very much for that, Monica. So Peggy, is there anything else we should touch base on in terms of the employment sector before we tap into healthcare?
Yeah, another very interesting part of the division is related to the National Employment Service Center, which was received a lot of necessary attention under the leadership of our former minister, Minister Pamela Gordon-Carty. Miss Pamela Gordon-Carty, as most would remember, published a policy. I refer to it affectionately as the Pamela policy, that placed the National Employment Service Center front and center in the discussion and in the ability for a business to seek to recruit persons, and more importantly, seek to recruit persons that are not Dutch nationals. Quite a bit of time has elapsed. Like, you know, there's a jokey phrase on social media that says, you know, nothing in St. Maarten lasts longer than 7 days. After the 7th day, nobody remembers it again and everybody just forgets it. And, you know, it saddens me to say that for the most part, since Minister Pamela Gordon has left office, that policy, you know, it hasn't received the necessary attention. I want to be careful how I phrase my words, because I definitely don't want anybody to interpret that the current government or the current coalition or the bloc coalition in Parliament, or for that matter, any of the 15 parliamentarians, as if they're not for that policy. I think by and large, when we went to Parliament in February or March, just before COVID, with Minister Pamela Gordon, it was clear to me during that parliamentary meeting that the Pamela policy received good support and sufficient support by every member of Parliament. Of course, there were some questions, concerns, things need to be ironed out, etc. I also believe that the Council of Ministers, the Jacobs I cabinet and the current Jacobs II cabinet, including Minister Panafleck, is supportive of the Pamela policy. Of course, everybody, given the COVID situation, is looking at how do we now apply it. So I'm pleased to say that as of last week, the entire procedural operational manual of the National Employment Service Center has been rewritten and adjusted to reflect areas of the Pamela policy that we definitely will be applying and rolling out. And it will include that the business officers of the National Employment Service Center will be mandated to sit in interviews of all these businesses that walk and come and say that they need to get a foreigner, a non-national, to sit in the seat of a position here in country St. Maarten. I believe, and I have publicly stated this and privately to Minister Pamela Gordon as well, she did something that, in my opinion, was long overdue. I may not have agreed initially with the methodology that she used to do it, and we're all different, but I commend the fact that as a woman, a professional woman coming from the private sector, and really just coming in there and within a short period of time, just getting it done, I publicly commended her on it, and I have no reservation but to do so again. In her last day in office, I also commended her and told her, you know, all is well that ends well. We had a rough start, but we definitely ended up on a very, very positive and a good relationship with each other that still stands. We're still in connection and in discussions with each other on varying topics as a professional woman to woman. So that's it for the National Employment Service Center. As it regards employment permits, Keoma, you would have known, of course, based on the announcement made by Minister Anna Richardson in her capacity as Minister of Justice. She made an announcement that her ministry will take the lead in regulating and revisiting the borders, if I can put it like that. I support Minister Anna Richardson with that initiative. The Council of Ministers, of course, she's not doing this on her own whim. She has the support of the Council of Ministers. And I do believe that it is necessary. I am a proponent that it should be done with a high level of human dignity, a high level of humanitarian care. We need to also take always into consideration that regardless of the nationalities of persons, everybody blood run red. So we are no different from each other. So we ought to approach this thing in a humanitarian way. And I do believe that Minister Richardson is a proponent of that approach. The employment permits section of the division will support that initiative by way of validating if the non-national indeed should remain in this job, if there are indeed no locals or no Dutch nationals that can take this role, if the business has continued to do the due diligence to ensure that they have exerted effort. And all of these aspects that I'm bringing up are in the legislation that governs foreign labor. And if the business has continued to show effort to work with the National Employment Service Center. So those are all the things that we will finally start to put teeth to the tiger, if I can put it like that, to regulate our borders more stringently and to ensure that the limited resources that we have here in St. Maarten, that they are available for the people that are legally required to be here. I do want to add something to this discussion, Keoma, that is something that's very controversial, but something that I believe needs to be addressed not only by the Ministry of Public Health, Social Development and Labor, but of course, across all 7 ministries. We have too many persons that are born in St. Maarten, and as you know, that law is in the Civil Code as well, but I'm not familiar with exactly which book. I think it's book 4, but I could be wrong. It is the law that governs family and nationality. The born here story does not guarantee you Dutch nationality. Our laws are not written like that. The child that is born here on St. Maarten receives the nationality of the mother upon birth. So if the mother is a Jamaican, when she gives birth to the child here, the child gets the Jamaican nationality, Haitian, Dominican, Castilian, go down the line, Trinidadian, Guyanese. So there's a whole contingent of our population in St. Maarten, and I believe that it is a significant amount of people that are loose on the labor market that do not have Dutch nationality, and their parents also fail to continue to sign them up to get permanent residency, that have fallen between the cracks completely. They have gone to school here, they have contributed here in the sense that going to school means they had to take $1 and buy a pate and a soda. To me, that's a contribution to country. And I do believe, and I'm stating this openly and frankly, I do believe that any initiative to control our borders must first start with looking at that group of people that are displaced and unfairly so. And I believe that the government, it may be right to start there. My humble opinion, but this is Peggy-Ann Dross' opinion, not the government of St. Maarten's opinion, just to position it clear. So that's it in general. I do have, we do have to talk about that medical insurance thing, before this show finish. What time is it, Keoma?
Do you, Peggy, do you see how fast the hour goes? Do you see how fast? And
I under sweat. I'm ready to finish with this.
But Peggy, let me tell you, when it comes to the permit, I think we need to have the employment permit. I think we need to have a totally separate Gyhaff to just divulge on there, because there are just so many things. There are just so many things that I think also, I know also because I'm a Guyanese by birth. I'm Dutch by nationality. I'm Guyanese by birth. So being raised in the environment where I'm exposed to persons, who are going through this process of applying for work permits, whereby the employer should be going through this process, then they're held accountable for payment. And there are just so many things that can be said there. But as I said, this is, for me, is a whole different conversation. This will just, we do not want the dynamics right now to change. So let's not go there. But I will mention this though, in terms of children being born here. I personally know a case, right? I personally know a case. This person is from the Dominican Republic. Their father was acknowledged by his father like 30-something years ago. And by that acknowledgement, he obtained the Dutch nationality. So the young man who was acknowledged by his father, of course, over the course of the 30+ years, he has children. The children now has children. And what happened, I think it was 2017, the person who I know personally, they went to renew for since they were a baby, they had the Dutch nationality since baby, a few months old, right? So they went to renew their passport at the what is it?
Census, the civil registry.
Census, thank you. Yes, the census office. And for whatever reason, they were told that they had to withdraw them. So right now that their nationality was taken away, because from what was explained to them, when the civil registry, all of those years ago, acknowledged the father, he was 18 years old at the time. So he should not have been acknowledged from his father. So now, I don't know if it seemed as if they were going through some backlog, but the rippling effect that caused is that person and their brother and sister, after they had this nationality from babies, right? So from now, from 20-something, 30-something years, their nationality passport has been taken away from them. Their children who were born and inherit only the Dutch passport, they are losing theirs as well. So that again is a whole different conversation, because here it is now in the height of COVID, one of those persons is laid off from their job. And because they have to now go through a permit process, they have to go and have resident permit, which they didn't have from since they never had it, right? They have to go through that resident permit process.
Yeah, the nationality law is executed by, as you know, on the country St. Maarten and what we were able to gain control over in our so-called autonomy. Nationality is not one of them. The process of nationality remains the bevoegdheid, the authority of the kingdom, executed by the governor, and the civil registry is the administrative body that processes it. It's governed by an entire different law. I would have hoped that those persons that went through that, there were many people, I remember that, during a cleanup project that was being done at a civil registry funded by the kingdom, a complete cleanup project many years ago. I would hope that they would have, in the meantime, maybe sought legal counsel and find their way. I wouldn't be able to speak into that. And the employment permit process is not party to the nationality law. It's two separate pieces of legislation. I do want to say, though, that it is important to note that the employment permit process, we do not deal with individuals, we deal with businesses. The business is responsible to come in and submit the application for the employment permit of the person that they wish to recruit for the vacant position that they say they have. So that's a whole different, but I do agree with you, Keoma, that discussing employment permits, the Pamela policy, as well as the role of the National Employment Service Center warrants an entire hour by itself. And I would be very happy to come back to discuss that, to give more insight on permits, how that speaks into residency permits, the discussion on gaps. You know, people panic, oh God, I'm gonna get a gap. And those things, I think that warrants an hour. I would like, because I see the time, I would like to delve into the aspect of social services, a very small unit in the division, but a very, I would say, powerful unit. 3 social workers, one having a bachelor's degree in social work, one having a master's degree in public health. We also have many persons in that unit, all highly skilled persons. I make it my business to recruit students that are finished studying and bring them back so they could get an opportunity to work in the government of St. Maarten, and many of persons in the division are returning students. That being said, and I spoke to you at length about this, and I definitely want to start to talk about social services in the aspect of medical aid. Too many people in St. Maarten focus only on the financial aid. Financial aid is important. We all need a guilder to buy bread from Carl and Son or Samuel's Bakery in Middle Region. So I'm not trying to say money is not important. However, and especially in this COVID 2019 situation, and COVID ain't going nowhere, the need to have medical coverage is critical. There are too many people in St. Maarten that do not have medical coverage. I recall many years, the then Minister of VSA, Cornelius de Wever, then the Minister of VSA, Emile Lee, all championed the implementation of a NHI or the GHI, I can't keep up, General Health Insurance Package that had to be rolled out. You know, it went to Parliament, come back, bring back, whole story. But there are too many people without medical coverage that don't need to be in the state that they're in. And it has gotten to the point, and the reason why I'm so passionate about stating this, Keoma, is that, and this gonna sound bad, it has become an inconvenience at this point. It cannot be that the trend continues that when civil servants, well, I shouldn't put it like this, but it cannot be correct that on a Saturday, 3 times out of the month, that's a lot for a weekend, that I receive a call from SZV, Peggy, SZV emergency number. Hi, Miss Dross, how are you? Sorry to bother you on a Saturday. We have an emergency. Okay, what's the emergency? Yeah, we just got the air ambulance in Colombia. They're supposed to be arriving. They're touching down on the tarmac soon. We have a patient. He or she, the person, got in an accident with a motorbike, fell off a roof, head split in 2, arms broken. This one have cancer, a list of critical issues. And Dr. Holliday and Dr. Winter, and so they say this patient needs to go to the trauma center now, but we just realized they don't have medical coverage. So we're calling you to seek approval for the air ambulance and also approval for the medical coverage in order to get this person off island. That's a very unfair position to put me in, or anybody in, where I have to stand up here now on a Saturday with very limited information and only having at my disposal the crying closest family of this sick patient, the doctor, and the fact that they have no medical coverage. And this is Dutch nationals, By and large, it's Dutch nationals. They could have just come to the department and apply for medical aid. Nothing stopping. They're unemployed. They don't have work, whatever. They could have just come to the department and apply for it. Don't come with a story, oh yeah, but when you go, they're asking you to bring your mother jockey from Curacao and out of the way things. Don't come with that. There's nothing more important than your health. There's nothing more important than the surety that you have medical coverage in the event, God forbid, something were to happen to you. If you don't get it for yourself, think about your loved ones, your children, your parents, your spouse. You know, and then I'm caught between a rock and a hard place, because I'm like, what do you do now? Because remember, not everybody automatically gets medical aid, because sometimes it's a situation where they don't have to come to social services. Sometimes it's about me calling the SZV emergency number back and saying, okay, I just found out that Keoma actually was working before somewhere, so she should actually get the SZV card under the SZV and not under social services. So can you guys, so then there's a whole investigation that has to occur. 20 minutes of investigation for a critically ill patient in the medical center, with the air ambulance touching down by Princess Juliana. Within the 15 minutes, you realize that's a long amount of time. Why am I bringing this up? Why am I bringing this up? There is no excuse why a Dutch passport holder in this country, or a permanent resident holder, because our law affords for permanent resident holders to benefit from this as well, walking around without medical coverage. There is no reason for that. I also get too many calls of senior citizens that don't have medical coverage. And when you ask them why, to me the reasons are not sufficient. To me, when I weigh the value of life and the value of a disease that can impact you against you just while you're good now, just taking a few extra steps to submit documents, to me, I don't understand how people are thinking. This is by far the most frustrating aspect of my job. And I'm sorry if I'm coming across as if I'm frustrated. I am, because no one should be without medical coverage, and there's a means and way for you to get it. Inconvenience yourself a little bit for a lifetime of security with the medical card. I think I say enough, because that whole thing does get me worked up.
I cannot imagine. I really can't. I would never want to put myself in your position, having to face so many challenges with so many situations on a daily basis, and then on the weekends as well. So, well, Peggy, you know why? Sorry?
It doesn't have, I could get a call tonight. It doesn't only happen on the weekend. I've just brought the weekend forward is because a division, a unit like social services doesn't close its door to the public 3:30 Friday. As a matter of fact, we are in quarantine now, and the unit is constantly working. Yesterday, day before, we processed a card for a critically ill patient. This one had to leave, go this. It never stops. It never stops. Not because we're not in the building, not because it's Saturday or Sunday. You could be in church. I could be in church on a Sunday and I'm getting a WhatsApp lighting up. Like I told you yesterday, on the weekend, there are 3 persons that call me that create a bit of an acid in my stomach on the weekend. The first one is the minister, whoever he or she is. Any one of those 7 ministers calling me on a weekend, I like, oh God, what happened now again? Or my secretary general, or the SZV. Those 3 numbers, those 3 entities there. And many times I get frustrated, because I just be like, that really didn't have to go like that. Why that person didn't? You know, we also faced with a situation where with social services, you know, we have changed as a country so much, Keoma. Years ago, when I say years, I mean 10, 15 years ago, you would have never heard of people really going hungry. elderly people going hungry. You know, it really used to be a situation where seniors were looked out for by the neighbor. Look a pan of sugar, look a cup of flour. The fact that, and this is a real situation we're dealing with now, a current situation, the fact that my department has to deal with a senior citizen that is pre-dementia, is a dialysis patient, and is living on their own with their children not looking after them, where we have to mediate now between trying to get that senior citizen to go to the senior citizen home, get on a wait list, because that's another story. My hats off to Brechje. I always say Brechje is my sister from another mother, Brechje Boetekes. But we get caught up, and many times it's heartbreaking because we sometimes sit with children and say, yeah, I'm tired of my mother and you realize that no matter what, this is your mother, your father. Many years ago, government would not have been put in the position to have to take care so abundantly of seniors, because seniors were our honored people in society. Children never would turn the blind eye to their seniors. No matter what your mother do you, your father do you still look out for them, no matter what. That is something that has been noted.
I wouldn't ask what do you think has changed over the years, because that will just take us into a whole nother dynamic of a conversation. I wouldn't even do that. So Mary McDonough says, very good and valuable information. Keoma, you need to have Peggy back again. Peggy, I'm
not coming back.
I don't believe it. Definitely not. So again, I'm reminding our viewers to sign up for Gyhaffin with Keoma newsletter. Please, please, please. You know, we are building this platform. We really want to do it right. And we cannot do this right. We cannot do it at all without our viewers, without our public support. So just, if you don't mind, gyhaffin.com, Gyhaffin.com. Know that we're still working on the website. We are still working on it. But for now, just send us your email address, sign up for our newsletter. We're really, really putting this content out here, not for us, but for the public. All right. So, Peggy, this is COVID. There are so many cases. How are you all doing? How are you all handling this? In terms of,
you know, we need to always position things rightly. You know, the COVID case, the COVID-19 is a public health crisis. And the ministry actually has a public health division headed by Ms. Fenna Arnell. She's also the key coordinator, the senior coordinator over ESF 6, which is the public health arm of the EOC. You would have seen her many times with the chair of the EOC when the pavilion was being built by the medical center that was donated by the Netherlands, and the container EOC units, etc. So the entire COVID aspect really resides under Ms. Fenna Arnell, together with CPS, that is basically the execution agency of the public health arm of the ministry. And that, of course, as you know, Ms. Ava Lista de Weaver heads that. So we only get involved with COVID-related aspects in terms of the indirect impact that COVID may have had on the population, be it loss of job, be it the need for financial aid, be it the need of medical aid, be it the need of a social worker if they have none, and that sort of assistance. So we're not actually involved in the actual public health aspect. That would be under the Division of Public Health and under CPS, which is Collective Preventive Services. So perhaps you can invite Ms. Arnell or Ms. Ava Lista to your show as well.
But Peggy, I was just about to say, I've known Fenna for quite a while, and she does such a very good job, such a friendly person. We always greet each other on the road. Peggy, after this, no, it's not weekend as yet. It's not weekend as yet. It won't be Saturday as yet. So after this,
I don't even know what's a weekend. I don't have weekends.
I won't call, but I would not contribute to it though. I would not contribute to that roster. So I won't call you on a weekend. But we definitely, after this talk, even if it's not today, tomorrow or so, we will definitely sit in a video call or so, and we will talk a bit more on how do we follow up, because today it's very, very compact. The information is so good. It's very compact. It's a lot of information. So we definitely want to know how we discuss rather, how can we segment these, compartmentalize, and really go a little deeper in follow-up show and follow-up gas as well.
Yeah, I think that you can do an entire show on, hold on, I see a call coming in. Oh no, that's not an important person. Sorry. We can actually do an entire show, because there's some of the services that I haven't even mentioned yet, because we just don't have the time. We have the labor and the business registration arm of the division, and how that ties into the permits. I think that would be a very useful conversation that could easily take up an hour. It will include the entire trajectory of how a business applies for a permit and what exactly the department does to ensure that the business is compliant. I would like to add this, because this is something that is important to say in this COVID response. The department has taken on a different operation. As I met with the senior officers and the section heads in the division, I told them when we were on lockdown that we cannot go back to the division and operate business as usual. We cannot. What did I mean by that? When a business comes now to apply for a permit, I do not care if it is a renewal permit and this person has had a permit for 20 years, or if it is a first-time permit. I also do not care what the position is. The business is going to have to answer a listing of different questions from the division that will include how did they respond to COVID 2019? Did you lay off employees? Did you pay employees? Did you apply for payroll support? If you applied for payroll support, how are you being able to bring in a non-national? How are you supporting the payroll of this non-national? So we're really, really digging deeper into the manner in which we are looking at employment permits in the COVID 2019 era, because it's definitely not going anywhere. It doesn't mean that it's punitive to the business. It just means that we cannot do business as usual. I know you want to wrap up, so I don't know if you want me to make a closing statement, which I am ready to do so. I told you something yesterday, which I would like to end with this, because I think it's good for people to know this. And sometimes when I say it, the receptionist, sometimes I walk down like twice a day to kind of go between the people and check with the receptionist, make sure everybody's doing all right. And sometimes when I say it to clients, my staff look at me like, why are you telling them that for? Like, why? Don't tell them that. Like, you could see they get like, I many times tell clients, and I say it, I'm not being sarcastic. I'm saying it from the deepest, realest part of my being. If you have not been pleased with the service of the department, I do not care which service it was. And I don't care which officer it was, including myself. If you have not been pleased with the manner in which we rendered a service, you haven't been pleased with a decision that was taken, you can always appeal a decision that was taken. If you even wasn't pleased in the manner in which I spoke to you or any officer spoke to you, you weren't pleased with how your case was handled, they took the paper from you wrong. I don't care how big or small the situation is. If it is your right, it is your right, very important, to file a complaint against the division, and file that complaint by booking in an official letter to the minister, because we report to the minister. Or better yet, I always encourage people, visit the Bureau Ombudsman. Why? Because the significant changes that this division has made, all the positive changes that we have made over the past 9 years have, for the most part, come about because we were called to order by the Bureau Ombudsman. The Bureau Ombudsman called a hearing and she hammered it. Afterwards, she said, Mrs. Dross, we want you to revisit this procedure. Look at this, look at that, many times. And we have adjusted. We constantly have to adjust. We cannot remain rigid. And the only way that we can improve our services is if people seem to have a problem with that. And like, what's she trying to say? Like, no, come back, we willing. Even if it's a forgotten case, even if there's something that you think that, come file an official complaint so that we can check it out and come back and we all agree this and this, and you get closure in that sense. So I definitely would like to end by stating that, because I am not afraid of criticism. I dish it out, so I should be able to take it, and I believe that I take it very good. Maybe that's why I expect people to be able to take it. I don't know.
Peggy, I am sitting here and I'm in amazement just by what you just stated. And just the level of ethics, level of transparency, and the level of even allowing persons, encouraging persons to hold your person accountable. I think that in itself is marvelous. The human you are in that sense, the ethics, the character you showcase in itself is, a lot of persons don't have that. A lot of persons are not able to deal with constructive criticism. But as you said, you dish it out, so then you should be able to take it. And I think that is very, very commendable for not only yourself, but as a division head, it's a very, very, very good way to lead by example. So I must say,
my looks are very deceptive, and I think the only person that really knows me well is my mom. And probably the SG as well, because she said something last year and I was like, oh, you're getting to know me good. I am big in stature and my mouth is big, but actually my heart is very soft. I sat there before yesterday on a live feed talking about my team with this COVID thing. And just before I went live, I was crying hysterically. I have gone many times to my SG and the financial controller of the ministry and wept. And Joy would be like, what happened, Peggy? Joy, why are you doing this thing? See the people, oh God, and crying. After I get it out, I'm like, okay. And Joy told me, oh, Peggy does get very emotional. She's very soft in that area, but she'll level out and she'll organize herself. So I think I'm a bit misunderstood. So, but no problem with that.
Well, I think there's nothing wrong with that, being misunderstood, right? It keeps people on their toes as well. It keeps people on their toes. They become very cognizant in a manner in which they will want to approach you. They know who they're dealing with, so they know how to approach you.
Yeah. They know.
Sorry?
I said they know for sure, because that's one thing. If I know, I will bury you with my knowledge. Don't come up to me talking foolishness. That's one thing.
And that is the advantage you have when you are well read. When you know what you know, you're not able to back down, because you're confident with what you know. And that also is what makes you a force all by yourself, because people underestimate the power of knowledge. And you do not have to go to the university and have a PhD, but just wherever you are, the realm you work in, the realm you exist in, it's always good to know what you're supposed to know and even go out of that to understand. And what I very, very much appreciate, Peggy, the manner in which you lead is by understanding this is not about you or your team. This is about the people. This is about us. And how can you and your team, all of us, improve the systems? How can we together, collectively, how can we move forward together better? And the only way for us to do that is by having conversations, by gaffing, right? And the only way for us to gaffing, and the only way for us to be held accountable, and being held accountable does not mean that it has to be malicious. Being held accountable, I'm going to repeat it, does not mean that it has to be malicious or that it will be malicious. But for us to be able to take heed and be held accountable and know that this is not about you, but about the services we provide for the people.
Correct.
Why work? Why do this job if we are not able to understand what the needs of our people are in order to enhance it as we move forward? So I'm very, 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 very much appreciative of that. on your behalf and the manner in which you lead your team. To our viewers, we have Tamisha Priest. Hi, Tamisha. How are you doing? Tamisha said, Peggy is, you are gentle.
She lied. That's a lie.
That's a Taros, Peggy, don't worry. And that's a laugh. So Glenda Luge, she said you're a straight shooter. You definitely are a straight shooter, but you're not a straight shooter without facts. You know what you're saying. You can back up your arguments at any point. So we're very much appreciative of that. We thank you so much. And I think our viewers thank you as well for being here and dishing out all of this knowledge, all of this teaching. I myself, I was schooled, and I'm pretty sure so many of our viewers were schooled as well. So Peggy, our viewers, so thank you very much. But Peggy, before I allow you to go, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to Gyhaffin newsletter. We're really working very hard on this. We're building this platform not to just come every Thursday and talk, but we really want to check in with our viewers to make sure that we're able to deliver the content that is necessary for you, that is effective in this COVID time and just in general as well. So we want to hear from you. We want you to hear from us. We will have a feedback tab on our website as well, where you can contact us confidentially. So thank you so much in advance for subscribing. That's Gyhaffin, Gyhaffin.com. So to our viewers, to Peggy, I'll say good evening until next week, Thursday. So let me do this. Every week I have this thing, Peggy, where yours truly have issues of getting off of this. So let's do this.
What do you mean issues? Like you just have to press.
But remember, we're on Zoom. So I'm going to do it now. I'm going to listen. I'm mastering it. I'm getting it. I'm getting it.
Let's press leave and press leave for everybody.
No, but this is Zoom. We're on Zoom streaming live on Facebook. So we need to end the live on Facebook. So that's the issue there. So I got it now, though. I got it. So guys, thank you so much to our viewers. Thank you, Peggy, again. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. See you. Bye.